On the morning of his daughter's wedding, a father pressed play on a hidden recording and realized the man walking her down the aisle was her future killer. But instead of calling the police, he did something far more terrifying. The morning of the wedding felt too perfect. That was the first thing Daniel Harper noticed. Sunlight poured through the tall glass windows of the estate, washing everything in a warm, golden glow that looked almost staged. The kind of light photographers dream about. The kind of light that makes people believe nothing bad could ever happen here. 300 guests filled the white chairs lined across the garden, dressed in soft pastels and tailored suits, whispering, smiling, sipping champagne as if they were part of a movie they'd paid to watch. At the far end, a floral arch dripped with ivory roses and cascading orchids, framing the aisle where his daughter would soon walk. Everything was flawless, and that's exactly what made Daniel uneasy. He stood near the back, adjusting the cuff of his navy suit, his expression calm, controlled. To anyone watching, he looked like a proud father moments away from giving his daughter the happiest day of her life. But inside something was off. Across the lawn, Emily laughed. His daughter. She stood surrounded by her bridesmaids, her white dress catching the sunlight like it had been designed just for this moment. Her smile was wide, genuine, innocent, the kind of smile that made Daniel feel both overwhelming pride and a quiet, crushing fear. Because she had no idea. Not about the recording. Not about the plan. Not about the man she was about to marry. Mr. Harper? Daniel turned slightly. The wedding coordinator approached him with a polite, rehearsed smile. 5 minutes until we begin. 5 minutes. Daniel nodded once. Thank you. She walked away quickly, already focused on her next task, leaving him alone again with the noise of laughter, music, and clinking glasses. 5 minutes until everything changes. His gaze drifted toward Adrian Cole. The groom stood near the aisle, shaking hands with guests, his posture confident, his smile effortless. He looked like everything a father would want for his daughter. Successful, charming, respected, perfect. Daniel studied him carefully, like a man staring at a painting he now knew was a forgery. Adrian laughed at something a guest said, placing a hand over his chest in a gesture that felt sincere to everyone else. But Daniel saw it now. The timing, the precision, the performance. Every movement calculated, every expression rehearsed. A man playing a role, and he was very, very good at it. Dad, Daniel turned again, and this time his heart tightened. Emily was walking toward him, lifting the edge of her dress slightly as she moved across the grass. Her eyes sparkled, her cheeks flushed with excitement. She looked happy. Can you believe this? She said, breathless, almost laughing. It's actually happening. Daniel forced a small smile. Yeah, he said softly. It is. She reached for his arm, holding it like she used to when she was a little girl crossing the street. That same instinct. That same trust. Adrian's been amazing through all of this, she continued. I don't know what I would have done without him. Daniel's jaw tightened just slightly, but not enough for her to notice. I'm glad you're happy, he said. She studied his face for a moment, her smile fading just a little. You're not nervous, are you? She teased gently. You look like you're about to go into a board meeting. Daniel let out a quiet breath. I just want everything to go right, he said. It will, she replied instantly. No hesitation. No doubt. Today's perfect. Perfect. The word echoed in his mind like a warning. Emily leaned in and hugged him, her arms wrapping around him tightly. For a second, Daniel closed his eyes. He could still remember holding her when she was 5 years old, after she scraped her knee. The way she cried into his shoulder. The way she believed he could fix anything. And now he was about to break her world. You're the best dad ever, she whispered. The words hit harder than anything else that morning. Daniel swallowed slowly. Go get ready, he said gently. They're about to start. She pulled back, smiling again, completely unaware of the storm already forming around her. Don't cry, okay? She joked. You'll ruin the photos. Daniel nodded. I'll try. She laughed, then turned and walked back toward the bridal suite, her dress trailing behind her like something out of a dream. Daniel watched her go, and for a moment, just one moment, he almost stopped everything. He almost walked up to the officiant, almost told the guests to leave, almost chose the easy way. But then, his hand slowly slipped into his pocket, and he felt it, the small, cold device resting against his palm. The recording, the truth. Daniel's expression hardened. Across the garden, Adrian looked up, and their eyes met. The groom smiled. Confident. Certain. Like a man who believed he had already won. Daniel didn't smile back. Because in 5 minutes, he was going to destroy everything. Daniel hadn't planned to spy on his own family. That's what he told himself the night everything changed. It started small, too small to justify suspicion. A missed call. A door closing a little too quickly. Conversations that stopped the moment he entered the room. At first, he ignored it. Families go through phases, he thought. Distance. Secrets. It happens. But then came the look. One evening, about 3 weeks before the wedding, Daniel had walked into the kitchen unexpectedly. Emily and Adrian were standing close together, speaking in low voices. The second they saw him, Emily smiled too quickly, and Adrian didn't smile at all. He just watched Daniel. Cold. Measuring. Silent. That was the moment something shifted. Daniel didn't confront them. He didn't ask questions. He simply nodded, poured himself a glass of water, and left the room. But that night, he didn't sleep. Because for the first time, he felt like a stranger in his own house. And Daniel Harper had spent his entire life learning one thing. When something feels wrong, it usually is. 2 days later, he installed the recorder. He told himself it was temporary, just to ease his mind, just to prove he was overthinking. The device was small, no bigger than a matchbox. He placed it inside his study, tucked beneath the edge of his desk where no one would notice it. It wasn't even meant for them. At least, that's what he told himself. The first few recordings were nothing. Background noise. Footsteps. The hum of the air conditioner. Occasional phone calls that meant nothing. Daniel almost removed it. Almost convinced himself he'd let paranoia get the best of him. Until the 4th night. It was late, past midnight. Daniel had fallen asleep in his bedroom when a faint sound woke him. Footsteps downstairs. Quiet, careful. He checked the time. 12:43 a.m. Too late for casual conversation. He stayed still, listening. A door opened, then closed. His study. Daniel didn't move. He didn't go downstairs. He didn't confront anyone. Instead, he waited. And the next morning, with a strange, heavy feeling in his chest, he played the recording. At first, it was just silence. A few seconds of static. Then, a voice. Lucas, Daniel's adopted son. You sure this is the right place to talk? Daniel froze. Lucas rarely went into the study. Almost never at night. Then came another voice. Adrian. Calm. Low. Controlled. No cameras in here. I checked. Daniel's grip tightened on the edge of the desk. Checked. There was a pause. Then a faint sound, like someone pouring a drink. And then, laughter. Not loud. Not warm. Sharp. Mocking. He really has no idea, does he? Lucas said. Daniel felt something drop in his stomach. Adrian chuckled softly. Your old man, he replied. He still thinks I'm the best thing that ever happened to this family. A long silence followed. The kind that feels intentional. Like something is about to be said that can't be taken back. And then, he won't see it coming, Lucas added. Daniel's breathing slowed. His ears rang. He leaned closer to the speaker, as if the distance might somehow protect him from what came next. Adrian's voice lowered. After the wedding, he said, we move fast. Daniel's heart stopped. Accounts first, Adrian continued. I've already got access through Emily. Once we're married, it's even easier. Lucas exhaled sharply. And him. A pause. A long one. Daniel felt his chest tighten. Adrian didn't answer right away. When he did, his tone had changed. Colder. He's old, Adrian said. Fragile. A fall down the stairs, a medical emergency, happens all the time. Daniel's fingers went numb. Lucas let out a nervous laugh. That's risky. Not if it looks natural, Adrian replied. Worst case, we put him somewhere. Nursing home. Out of the way. Daniel stared at the wall, his mind struggling to keep up. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. But the voices kept going. Relentless. Precise. We take everything, Lucas said quietly. Adrian didn't hesitate. Everything. Silence filled the recording again. But it wasn't empty. It was heavy. Final. Like a decision had just been sealed. Daniel didn't realize he had stopped breathing until his lungs burned. He slowly leaned back in his chair, staring at nothing. The room around him felt unfamiliar. Like he had just stepped into someone else's life. Lucas. His son. The boy he raised. And Adrian. The man his daughter trusted. Planning this. In his house. Under his roof. Daniel's hand trembled slightly as he reached forward, and paused the recording. The silence that followed was deafening. For a long time, he didn't move, didn't think, didn't react, because something inside him was breaking. Quietly, completely. And when he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "What have you done?" But deep down, he already knew. This wasn't the beginning. This was just the first time he heard the truth. And it wouldn't be the last. Daniel didn't listen to the recording just once. He played it again, and again, and again, each time, hoping, irrationally, that he had misunderstood something, that maybe the words would change, that maybe there was context he missed. But the voices never changed. The meaning never softened. If anything, it became clearer, colder, more real. By the third time, Daniel stopped reacting emotionally. That was the shift. The shock turned into focus. He leaned forward in his chair, elbows on the desk, listening not as a father, but as a man analyzing a threat. Every word mattered now. Every pause, every tone. After the wedding, we moved fast. That wasn't speculation. That was a timeline. Accounts first. I've already got access through Emily. That wasn't hope. That was preparation. And the part Daniel couldn't escape. A fall down the stairs happens all the time. That wasn't a joke. That was intent. Daniel paused the recording again. This time, he didn't sit in silence. He stood up, slowly, deliberately. His chair slid back with a low scrape across the floor, the sound sharp in the quiet room. For a moment, he just stood there, staring at the wall. Then he walked to the window. Outside, everything looked normal. Bright, peaceful, safe. Emily was in the garden, laughing with the event planner, flipping through a catalog of floral arrangements. She looked excited, carefree, alive. Daniel pressed his hand lightly against the glass. And for the first time, fear hit him. Not for himself, for her. She doesn't know? The words slipped out under his breath. Of course she didn't know. Emily trusted Adrian, loved him, defended him. Daniel had seen it 100 times. How she lit up when his name came up. How quickly she shut down any concern, any question, any hesitation. She wasn't part of this. She was being used. Daniel turned away from the window and walked back to the desk. His movements were sharper now, more controlled. He picked up his phone, scrolled to Lucas's contact. His thumb hovered over the call button. Lucas, the boy he chose, the boy he raised, the boy he defended, even when others questioned his decisions. Daniel remembered teaching him how to drive. Remembered the first time Lucas called him dad. Remembered believing, truly believing, that blood didn't matter. That loyalty was built, not given. His thumb tightened. For a split second, he almost called, almost demanded answers, almost gave them a chance to explain. But then, Daniel looked down at the recorder, and something inside him shut off. Because this wasn't confusion. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a plan. And if he called them now, they would deny everything. They would adjust. They would disappear. Or worse, they would move faster. Daniel slowly lowered the phone. "No," he said quietly. "Not like this." Instead, he did something far more dangerous. He started thinking ahead. If Adrian already had access to Emily's accounts, then the damage had already begun. If they were waiting until after the wedding, then the wedding wasn't just a celebration. It was a trigger, a point of no return. Daniel's mind began connecting pieces he hadn't noticed before. Adrian insisting on joint financial planning, helping Emily organize her accounts, encouraging her to consolidate assets. At the time, it sounded responsible, supportive. Now, it sounded like setup. Daniel hit play again. But this time, he listened past the obvious. He listened for mistakes. And he found one. Once we're married, it's even easier. Easier. Not necessary. That meant Adrian already had partial access. The marriage just made it cleaner. Legal. Safer for him. Daniel exhaled slowly. That was enough. Enough to know this wasn't just talk. Enough to know waiting wasn't an option. Enough to know this wasn't about revenge. This was about survival. He picked up the recorder, held it in his hand. Small, light, but it carried something heavier than anything in that room. Truth. And truth was dangerous. Daniel looked back toward the window one last time. Emily was still outside, still smiling, still planning a future that didn't exist. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Not because he had done something wrong, but because of what he was about to do. He slipped the recorder into his pocket. His face hardened. The hesitation was gone now, replaced by something colder, sharper, a decision. If they wanted to play this game, they picked the wrong man. Because Daniel Harper wasn't just a father. He was a man who had built everything he owned from nothing. A man who understood risk, timing, consequences, and most importantly, control. They think I don't see it coming. He let out a quiet breath, then shook his head slightly. No. His voice dropped to a near whisper. I'll be the one they never see coming. And in that moment, the victim disappeared, and something far more dangerous took his place. Daniel thought he had already heard the worst. He was wrong, because betrayal has layers, and the deeper you dig, the uglier it gets. That same night, after replaying the recording for what felt like the 100th time, Daniel noticed something he had missed before. A gap, a small stretch of silence near the end. At first, he assumed the conversation had ended. But then, a faint sound, movement, a chair shifting, glasses clinking again. They hadn't left. They were still there, still talking. Daniel leaned closer and pressed play. The audio crackled softly. Then Lucas's voice returned, quieter this time. Does she suspect anything? Daniel's chest tightened. Adrian let out a low chuckle. Emily, he said. She trusts me more than she trusts him. Him. Daniel. The word didn't sting the way it should have. Not anymore. Now it just confirmed things. Lucas exhaled. Still feels messy. Relax, Adrian replied. That's why the wedding matters. Once it's done, everything falls into place. A pause. Then Lucas asked the question Daniel didn't know he was afraid of. And her. Daniel froze. Adrian didn't answer immediately. But when he did, his tone shifted again. Smoother. Almost amused. She's not part of the problem, Adrian said. She's the solution. Daniel's grip tightened around the edge of the desk. Solution? What does that mean? Lucas asked. And then, Adrian said something that made Daniel's blood run cold. It means she signs whatever I put in front of her. Daniel's breath slowed. Heavy. Controlled. But his heart was pounding now. Because this wasn't just about money. This was about control. Total control. Lucas laughed under his breath. You really have her that wrapped around you? Adrian didn't hesitate. She'd walk into a fire if I told her it was warm. Silence. Then, and after? Lucas asked. Daniel leaned in, every nerve in his body alert. This was it. The part he hadn't heard clearly before. The part that changed everything. Adrian sighed, like someone bored of repeating the obvious. After the wedding, I stay long enough to clean everything out. Lucas didn't speak. So Adrian continued. Then I'm gone. Gone. The word echoed in Daniel's mind. Cold. Final. But it wasn't over. Because Lucas asked the question that mattered most. And Emily? There it was. The truth Daniel wasn't ready for. The truth no father is ever ready for. Adrian laughed. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just careless. Like the answer didn't matter. She'll figure it out eventually, he said. Or she won't. Doesn't really change anything. Daniel felt something twist in his chest. Tight. Painful. But Adrian wasn't finished. And by the time she does, he added, his voice dropping slightly, I'll already be gone. Daniel hit pause. Hard. The sudden silence rang in his ears. For a moment, he just stared at the device in his hand. Processing. Replaying. Trying to force the words into something less monstrous. But there was no softer version. No misunderstanding. No excuse. Adrian wasn't just planning to steal from his daughter. He was planning to destroy her. Emotionally. Financially. Completely. Daniel stood up again, more abruptly this time. The chair scraped loudly across the floor, but he didn't care. His thoughts were moving too fast now. Too sharp. Because something had just become painfully clear. This wasn't a shared betrayal. Lucas wanted the money. Power. Control. But Adrian? Adrian had something else entirely. Detachment. Cruelty. A willingness to walk away from the wreckage without looking back. Daniel walked out of the study. Down the hallway. Toward the kitchen. He needed air. Needed space. But as he stepped into the open room, he stopped. Because he heard her voice. Emily. She was on the phone. Laughing again. Soft. Carefree. I know, right? She said. I still can't believe I'm getting married. Daniel stayed where he was. Just out of sight. Listening. I got so lucky, she continued. Adrian's, he's everything. Daniel closed his eyes. The contrast was unbearable. Two realities. Existing at the same time. One built on love. The other on lies. He's so patient with me, Emily added. He says we're going to build something amazing together. Daniel opened his eyes slowly. His expression changed. Not emotional anymore. Not shocked. Not even angry. Just clear. Because now he understood something deeper than betrayal. He understood the trap. Adrian didn't need force. Didn't need threats. Didn't need violence. Because Emily would give him everything willingly. Sign anything. Trust everything. Love him through it. Daniel stepped back quietly before she could see him. Retreated down the hallway. Back into the silence. Back into reality. He closed the study door behind him. Slowly. Deliberately. Then looked down at the recorder one more time. That small device had just shown him the full picture. Not just what they were planning, but how far they were willing to go. Daniel exhaled. Long. Steady. And for the first time since this began, he stopped hoping he was wrong. They're not just taking everything. His voice was low. Controlled. They're going to leave her with nothing. His jaw tightened. And something darker settled in his eyes. Because now, this wasn't just about stopping them. This wasn't just about exposing the truth. This was about saving his daughter from a man who was already planning her destruction. And Daniel knew one thing for certain. If he made the wrong move, if he acted too soon, if he warned her without proof, she wouldn't believe him. And that would be the biggest mistake of all. Daniel didn't call the police. That was the part no one would understand. Any rational person, hearing what he heard, would have picked up the phone immediately, reported everything, handed over the recording, let the system handle it. But Daniel Harper wasn't thinking like a bystander. He was thinking like a father. And fathers don't gamble with their children's lives. He sat alone in his study long after the house had gone quiet. The lights were off. Only the faint glow from his desk lamp cut through the darkness, casting long shadows across the walls. The recorder sat in front of him, silent now, but its weight hadn't changed. If I go to the police, he said it out loud, slowly, testing the logic. They investigate. They question Adrian. Maybe Lucas too. He nodded slightly. That part made sense. But what happens next? Daniel leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on the ceiling. Because he already knew the answer. Adrian would deny everything. Lucas would back him up. They'd call it a joke. Taken out of context. Twisted. And Emily? Daniel closed his eyes. Emily would defend him. Without hesitation. Without doubt. She'd walk into a fire if I told her it was warm. Adrian's voice echoed in his head. And Daniel knew. It was true. If the police came too early, if the truth wasn't undeniable, Emily wouldn't just be hurt. She would turn against him. Against her own father. And once that happened, he'd lose her completely. Daniel sat up again, his expression sharpening. No, he said quietly. That's not how this ends. Because this wasn't just about proving a crime. This was about breaking an illusion. And illusions don't shatter easily. He stood up and walked to the window. The house was quiet. Still. Peaceful. Too peaceful. Because somewhere inside it, two people were planning to destroy everything he had built. And one person, the most important person, was completely blind to it. Daniel pressed his hand lightly against the glass. You trust him, he whispered. Not as a question, as a fact. He turned away, back toward the desk. And this time, when he looked at the recorder, he didn't see evidence. He saw leverage. They think I'll react, he muttered. They think I'll panic. A small, humorless smile touched his lips. That I'll go straight to the police. But Daniel had spent his entire life building things. Businesses, systems, deals. And he knew something most people didn't. The first move is rarely the winning one. If he acted now, he'd expose the plan. But he wouldn't stop it. Not completely. Not cleanly. Adrian would disappear. Lucas would follow. The money? Gone. The truth? Twisted. And Emily? Left behind. Confused. Heartbroken. Still believing the wrong version of the story. Daniel shook his head slowly. No. His voice dropped. I don't just stop this. His eyes hardened. I end it. The room felt different now. Colder. Sharper. Like something had shifted. Because Daniel wasn't reacting anymore. He was planning. He walked back to the desk and picked up the recorder. Turned it over in his hand. Small. Simple. But powerful. This isn't enough, he said. Not yet. One recording could be denied. Explained away. But a pattern? Proof. A full picture? That couldn't be ignored. Daniel reached for his phone again. But this time, he didn't scroll to Lucas. Or Emily. He opened a different contact. A name he hadn't touched in years. Marcus Hale. Daniel stared at it for a moment. Memories surfaced. Old conversations. Old favors. The kind of man you don't call, unless things are serious. Marcus wasn't just anyone. He was former federal. FBI. Daniel exhaled slowly, then pressed call. The line rang once, twice. Then, didn't expect to hear from you again, Daniel. The voice on the other end was calm, measured, sharp. Daniel didn't waste time. I need your help. A pause. Not long, but deliberate. What kind of help? Daniel looked down at the recorder, at everything it represented, at everything it was about to become. The kind, Daniel said quietly, that doesn't leave loose ends. Silence. Then, a faint shift in Marcus's tone. Serious now. Tell me what you've got. Daniel's grip tightened slightly, and for the first time since this began, he felt something close to control. They're planning to take everything, he said. And if I don't stop them, his voice hardened. They're going to destroy my daughter. Another pause. Then Marcus spoke. Do you have proof? Daniel looked at the device in his hand, then out toward the dark hallway, toward the life that was about to collapse. I have a start, he said. Marcus didn't respond immediately, but when he did, there was no hesitation left. Then we build the rest. Daniel closed his eyes for a brief second, not in doubt, not in fear, in acceptance. Because this was the moment everything changed. He wasn't just a father anymore. He was the man setting the trap. Daniel didn't meet Marcus Hale in an office. He met him in a place where conversations weren't recorded. It was a quiet bar on the edge of the city. No music, no crowd, just low lighting, worn wood, and the kind of silence that made people speak carefully. Marcus was already there when Daniel arrived, sitting in the corner, back to the wall, watching the door. He hadn't changed much. Same posture, same stillness, same eyes that didn't just look at you, but through you. Daniel walked over without hesitation. Marcus didn't stand, didn't smile. Been a while, he said. Daniel nodded once. Not long enough. Marcus gestured to the seat across from him. Sit. Daniel did. No small talk, no catching up, just tension. Marcus leaned back slightly, studying him. You don't call unless something's wrong, he said. Daniel reached into his pocket, placed the recorder on the table between them. Something small, but heavy. Listen. Marcus didn't touch it immediately. He looked at Daniel first, reading him, measuring. Then finally, he picked it up, pressed play. The bar stayed quiet, but at that table, everything changed. Marcus listened without interruption. No reaction, no questions, just silence. But Daniel watched him carefully, because men like Marcus didn't show shock. They showed understanding. When the recording ended, Marcus set the device down slowly, then leaned forward. Elaborate. Daniel didn't hesitate. He laid it all out. The wedding, the financial access, the manipulation, the plan to disappear, even the part about the accident. Marcus didn't interrupt once. He just listened, eyes steady, mind working. When Daniel finished, the silence between them stretched. Long, heavy. Finally, Marcus spoke. This isn't just theft. Daniel shook his head slightly. I know. Marcus tapped the recorder with his finger. This, he said, it's something, but it's not enough. Daniel didn't react. He already knew that. They'll deny it, Marcus continued. Say it's out of context. A joke. You push this too early, it disappears. Or they do, Daniel added. Marcus nodded once. Exactly. He leaned back again, folding his arms. So the question is, his eyes locked onto Daniel's. What do you actually want? Not what he needed, not what he feared, what he wanted. Daniel didn't answer immediately, because the truth wasn't simple. I want my daughter safe, he said finally. Marcus nodded slightly. And them? Daniel's jaw tightened. I want them exposed. A pause. Then, completely. Marcus studied him for a few seconds longer, then gave a small, almost approving nod. Good, he said, because those are two different objectives. Daniel didn't look away. I know. Marcus leaned forward again, his voice lower now. More precise. If you go after them directly, you risk your daughter. If you protect your daughter without proof, they walk away clean. Daniel's voice was steady. So we do both. A faint smile touched Marcus's lips. Now they were speaking the same language. Then we don't react, Marcus said. We build. Daniel felt it. That shift. That moment where chaos becomes strategy. What does that look like? Daniel asked. Marcus didn't hesitate. Step 1, he said. We verify everything. He tapped the recorder again. Not just what they said, What they've done? Daniel nodded. They've already accessed some accounts. Good, Marcus replied. That leaves a trail. Step 2. Marcus continued. We expand the picture. Daniel's brow tightened slightly. How? Marcus's eyes narrowed just a fraction. Men like Adrian, he said. They don't start with one victim. Daniel understood immediately. There are others. Marcus nodded. And they matter. Because one accusation is a story, but a pattern? That's a case. Step 3. Marcus said, we control the timing. Daniel leaned forward slightly. How long? Marcus's answer was immediate. Until they think they've won. Silence. Daniel let that settle. Because that meant one thing. The wedding, he said. Marcus didn't respond right away. But he didn't need to. That's where they're exposed, Daniel added. Marcus finally nodded. In front of everyone, he said. No escape. No denial. Daniel exhaled slowly. The image forming in his mind was clear now. Sharp. Precise. And my daughter? He asked. Marcus's tone softened, just slightly. Then we make sure, he said. She sees the truth before it's too late. Daniel looked down at the recorder again. At the beginning of all this. This is bigger than I thought, he said quietly. Marcus gave a small shrug. It always is. Then he leaned in one last time. Voice low. Final. You don't just have a problem, Daniel, he said. You have a window. Daniel looked up. Use it right, Marcus continued. And you don't just stop them. A beat. You end them. Daniel's expression didn't change. But inside, everything had locked into place. Because now, this wasn't just a father protecting his daughter. This was a plan. And it had already begun. Daniel didn't stop the wedding. That was the most dangerous part of his plan. Because canceling it would have been easy. Safe. Logical. But it would have ruined everything. 3 days after meeting Marcus, the house looked exactly the same. Flowers were still being delivered. Caterers still walked in and out. Emily still moved through it all like she was living inside a dream. And Adrian? Adrian looked even more confident. That was the point. Daniel stood in the dining room, watching as staff arranged place settings for the rehearsal dinner. Crystal glasses. Polished silverware. Everything placed with precision. Order. Control. Just like the illusion Adrian had built. Sir. Daniel turned slightly. One of the coordinators approached him, holding a clipboard. We just need final confirmation on the guest count. Daniel didn't hesitate. 300, he said. The woman nodded and walked away. Nothing unusual. Nothing suspicious. That's how it had to be. Because while the house looked calm on the surface, beneath it, everything was moving. Daniel stepped outside, pulling his phone from his pocket. One message. Short. Direct. Status. The reply came almost instantly. Marcus, we have 2 confirmed victims. Both lost 6 figures. Same pattern. Daniel's jaw tightened slightly. 2. That was enough to prove this wasn't new. But not enough yet. Another message appeared. Working on a 3rd. This one filed a complaint. Daniel exhaled slowly. Good. That meant paperwork. Records. A trail that couldn't be erased. He typed back. Timeline. A pause. Then, we'll be ready by the wedding. Daniel stared at the screen for a second longer. Then locked it. Perfect. Because that's when Adrian would feel safest. Inside, laughter echoed through the hallway. Emily again. Bright. Carefree. Daniel stepped back in. And immediately saw them. Adrian stood beside her, one arm resting lightly on her back, guiding her toward a group of guests. Effortless. Natural. Convincing. Daniel. Adrian called out, smiling. Like nothing in the world was wrong. Like he wasn't standing in the middle of his own trap. Daniel walked toward them. Calm. Measured. Everything ready? Adrian asked. Daniel nodded once. Almost. Adrian's smile widened slightly. Good. Wouldn't want anything to go wrong. The words hung in the air. Subtle. But loaded. Daniel met his eyes. And for a brief moment, neither of them looked away. 2 men. Both aware. But only one. Knew the full truth. Emily stepped between them, breaking the tension without even realizing it. Dad. Look, she said, holding up her phone. The photographer sent previews. Daniel looked down. Photos from earlier that day. Emily laughing. Adrian holding her hand. Moments frozen in perfection. They're beautiful, she said softly. Daniel nodded. They are. But he wasn't looking at the pictures. He was looking at Adrian's hand, the way it rested on hers. Possessive, controlled. And for a second, Daniel imagined what Emily would look like when that hand was gone. When the truth hit. When everything collapsed. "Hey," Emily said, nudging him gently. "Where'd you go?" Daniel blinked. Refocused. "I'm here," he said. She smiled. Satisfied. Adrian leaned in slightly. "Big day tomorrow," he said. Daniel nodded. "Yeah." Adrian's voice dropped just enough. Only Daniel could hear it. "Everything changes after this." Daniel didn't react. Didn't blink. Didn't move. "Yeah," he replied quietly. "It does." Adrian smiled again. Confident. Certain. He had no idea. That night, Daniel didn't sleep. He sat in his study again. The recorder in front of him. His phone beside it. Messages from Marcus still open. 3 victims now. All confirmed. All matching the same pattern. Fraud. Manipulation. Disappearance. Daniel leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. Running through everything one more time. The timing. The evidence. The moment. It had to be perfect. Too early. And Adrian walks. Too late. And Emily loses everything. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. You only get one shot at this. When he opened them again, there was no hesitation left. Because tomorrow wasn't a wedding. It was a stage. And every single person walking into that garden thought they were coming to witness a love story. They had no idea. They were about to witness something else entirely. A fall. And Daniel Harper was the one about to push. The morning of the wedding arrived like a dream. Soft, bright, deceptively calm. By 9 a.m., the estate was already alive. Staff moved quickly across the garden, adjusting chairs, polishing glassware, checking every detail for the 100th time. The air smelled of fresh flowers and expensive perfume, mixing with the quiet hum of anticipation. Everything was in motion. Everything except Daniel. He stood alone near the edge of the property, just beyond the main setup, where the noise faded into something distant. From there, he could see everything. The aisle, the arch, the seats filling slowly with guests. 300 people. 300 witnesses. Daniel adjusted his cuff again, not because it needed it, but because his hands needed something to do. Beautiful, isn't it? He didn't turn. He already knew the voice. Marcus. Dressed in a simple dark suit, blending in perfectly with the other guests. No badge. No authority visible. Just another face in the crowd. Looks perfect, Daniel replied. Marcus stepped beside him, eyes scanning the scene. Perfection makes people careless, he said quietly. Daniel nodded once. That's what we're counting on. A brief silence passed between them. Everything in place? Daniel asked. Marcus didn't look at him. Agents are positioned, he said. Plain clothes. Inside and outside. Daniel's expression didn't change. And the evidence? Marcus's voice lowered. Solid. Financial records. Victim statements. Transfers. Enough to hold him. Daniel exhaled slowly. That was what mattered. Not suspicion. Not belief. Proof. And Lucas? Daniel asked. Marcus glanced at him briefly. He's tied in. Not as deep, but enough. Daniel absorbed that. A small, almost invisible shift in his jaw. Good, he said. Because there was no turning back now. Music began to play softly from the speakers. A signal. Guests started taking their seats. The ceremony was about to begin. Daniel looked out again. Rows filling. Conversations fading. Attention focusing forward. They're ready, Marcus said. Daniel nodded. So are we. Marcus stepped back, blending into the crowd once more. Invisible. Watching. Daniel stayed where he was for a moment longer. Alone again. Then, Dad. He turned. Emily stood a few steps away, already in her dress. Fully ready. For a second, everything else disappeared. She looked unreal. The way sunlight caught the fabric. The way her eyes lit up when she saw him. Hey, she said softly. They're about to start. Daniel didn't answer immediately. He just looked at her. Really looked. Because in a few minutes, everything she believed in was going to break. You okay? She asked, tilting her head slightly. Daniel forced a small smile. Yeah, he said. Just taking it in. She stepped closer, slipped her arm through his. You always do this, she said lightly. Big moments, you go quiet. Daniel let out a soft breath. Just making sure I remember it. She smiled. You will. If only she knew. From across the garden, Adrian took his position near the altar, confident, relaxed, waiting. Emily followed Daniel's gaze and smiled. That's him, she whispered, like Daniel didn't already know. Daniel looked at Adrian, and for a brief second, their eyes met again. Adrian gave a subtle nod, a silent acknowledgement. Daniel returned it, just as subtle. Two men, standing on opposite sides of the same moment. Only one of them knew. This wasn't going to end the way he expected. Ready? Emily asked. Daniel looked back at her trust, her belief, her innocence. He swallowed once, then nodded. Yeah. Music shifted. The cue. The officiant stepped forward. Guests turned. Phones lifted. Cameras ready. Daniel took his first step down the aisle with Emily on his arm. Every step felt heavier than the last. Not because of fear, but because of what he was carrying. Truth, timing, and a decision that would change everything. They reached the front. Adrian stood there, smiling at Emily. Eyes soft, convincing. Daniel studied him one last time. The posture, the expression, the confidence. A man who believed he had already won. Daniel gently placed Emily's hand into Adrian's. A symbolic gesture, a transfer of trust. Adrian's fingers closed around hers. And for a brief moment, Daniel almost stopped. Almost said something. Almost ended it right there. But then, he stepped back. Because this wasn't the moment. Not yet. The officiant began speaking. Words about love, commitment, forever. The crowd listened, smiled, believed. And Daniel stood there quietly, counting down. Because in just a few minutes, the illusion would shatter. And everyone would finally see the truth. The officiant's voice flowed smoothly across the garden. Calm, measured, almost hypnotic. Marriage is built on trust, on honesty, on the promise of a shared future. Guests nodded, smiled. Some even wiped away early tears. It was everything a wedding was supposed to be. And Daniel stood just a few feet away, knowing every word was a lie. His eyes stayed fixed on Adrian, watching, studying. No hesitation, no nerves, no cracks. If anything, Adrian looked more confident with every passing second. Because this was his moment, his victory. Emily stood across from him, glowing with emotion, her hands gently held in his. Her eyes locked onto his like nothing else in the world existed. I love you, Adrian whispered softly, just loud enough for her to hear. Emily smiled, her voice trembling slightly. I love you too. Daniel felt it, that sharp, twisting pressure in his chest. Because this was real, for her. Every word, every promise, every second. The officiant continued. And now, we come to the vows. A ripple of anticipation moved through the crowd. Phones lifted, cameras focused. This was the moment everyone came for. Adrian went first. Of course he did. He took a slow breath, turned fully toward Emily, and began. From the moment I met you, he said, his voice steady, warm, practiced. I knew my life was about to change. Daniel almost admired it. The delivery, the tone, the precision. Adrian spoke like a man who had rehearsed every word. Because he had. You showed me what love really means, Adrian continued. What trust looks like. What it feels like to build something real with someone who believes in you. Emily's eyes filled with tears. The guests leaned in, hooked. Daniel didn't move. Because behind those words, he could still hear the recording. She'd walk into a fire if I told her it was warm. Adrian reached up, gently brushing a tear from Emily's cheek. Perfect timing. Perfect gesture. I promise to protect you, he said softly. To stand by you. To build a future together, no matter what comes. Daniel's jaw tightened. Protect her? The man standing there. Was the danger. Applause broke out lightly from the guests. Emotional. Moved. Adrian stepped back slightly. Confident. Certain. Then it was Emily's turn. She took a breath. A shaky one. I don't even know where to start, she said, laughing softly through tears. The crowd smiled. You came into my life when I wasn't looking for anything, she continued. And somehow, you became everything. Daniel closed his eyes for a brief second. Because every word she said made what was coming worse. You make me feel safe, she said. Daniel opened his eyes again. Safe. The word echoed louder than anything else. You make me feel like I can trust you with anything, she added. Daniel's hands slowly curled into fists at his sides. Because trust was exactly what Adrian was about to destroy. I choose you, Emily said softly. Today and every day after. The crowd erupted into quiet applause again. Beautiful, perfect, devastating. The officiant stepped forward, smiling. Thank you, he said warmly. That was... Wait. The word cut through everything. Not loud, not aggressive, but sharp enough to stop the entire ceremony. Every head turned. Daniel stepped forward. Slow, controlled. The shift was immediate. Confusion spread through the guests. Whispers began. Emily blinked, startled. Dad, she said softly. Adrian's expression didn't change at first, but his eyes sharpened. Calculating. The officiant hesitated. Sir? He asked uncertainly. Daniel didn't look at him. His gaze stayed locked on Adrian. I think, Daniel said calmly, we're missing something important. The air changed. Not just tense. Heavy. Adrian tilted his head slightly, a small smile forming. Daniel, he said smoothly, maybe we should talk about this later. Polite. Controlled. Still playing the role. Daniel shook his head once. No, he said. Now is perfect. A ripple of discomfort moved through the crowd. Emily looked between them, confused, nervous. Dad, what's going on? She asked. Daniel didn't answer her. Not yet. Because this moment had to be precise. He reached into his pocket, slowly, deliberately, and pulled it out. The recorder. Small, almost insignificant. But suddenly, it felt like the heaviest object in the world. Adrian's eyes dropped to it. Just for a second. But Daniel saw it. That flicker. The first crack. You said something, Daniel continued quietly. A few nights ago. Silence. Complete. And I think, he added, everyone here deserves to hear it. Emily's voice trembled. Dad, what are you talking about? Daniel finally looked at her. And for a brief moment, his expression softened. Because this was the last second before everything changed. I'm sorry, he said. Then, he pressed play. The sound was small, almost insignificant. A soft click. But in that moment, it was louder than anything else. At first, no one understood what was happening. The speakers crackled faintly as the audio connected. Guests shifted in their seats, confused smiles forming, assuming it was part of the ceremony. A video. A surprise. Something sentimental. Emily looked at Daniel. Dad? Daniel didn't respond. Because the recording had already begun. Static. A faint hum. Then, a voice. You sure this is the right place to talk? Lucas. The reaction was subtle at first. A few heads tilted, brows furrowed. Then came the second voice. Adrian. No cameras in here. I checked. And just like that, everything changed. Emily's smile faded. Adrian didn't move, but his hand, still holding hers, tightened slightly. Around them, whispers began to ripple through the crowd. What is this? Is that? Wait. Daniel stood still, eyes forward, letting it play. He really has no idea, does he? Lucas again. Clearer now. Louder. Adrian's quiet laugh followed. Your old man. He still thinks I'm the best thing that ever happened to this family. A sharp inhale echoed somewhere in the audience. Emily's hand slowly slipped out of Adrian's. Her eyes moved to him, searching, confused. Adrian. He didn't answer. Because the recording didn't stop. He won't see it coming. The words hung in the air like a blade. Guests shifted uncomfortably. Some leaned forward. Others looked around, unsure if they should even be listening. But no one spoke. Because something was wrong. Deeply wrong. After the wedding, we moved fast. Daniel watched Adrian now. And there it was. The second crack. Not in his posture. Not in his voice. In his eyes. That brief flicker of panic. Quick. Controlled. But real. Accounts first. I've already got access through Emily. Emily stepped back, like she'd been physically struck. What? She whispered. Her voice barely audible. Her world starting to tilt. Adrian turned to her quickly. Emily, listen, this isn't. But Daniel raised his hand slightly. And the recording kept going. And him. A pause. Then, He's old, fragile. A fall down the stairs happens all the time. Gasps. Loud now. Uncontrolled. Someone stood up. Another voice whispered, "Oh my God." Emily shook her head. No, no, that's not. Her eyes locked onto Adrian again. Desperate. Tell me that's not you. Adrian stepped forward, reaching for her. It's not what it sounds like. But she pulled away. The first real break. And then, the final piece. She'd walk into a fire if I told her it was warm. Silence. Heavy. Absolute. Emily's face drained of color. Because she recognized that voice. That tone. That certainty. And there was no explaining it away. The illusion was gone. Completely. Adrian's expression changed. Not dramatically. Not loudly. But enough. The charm disappeared. Replaced by something colder. Sharper. He exhaled slowly. Then looked at Daniel. Not as a father. Not as a man to impress. But as an opponent. You shouldn't have done that, Adrian said quietly. No denial. No panic. Just acknowledgement. The crowd reacted instantly. Voices rising. Confusion turning into outrage. What the hell is this? Is this real? Call someone. Emily stood frozen. Tears falling now. But she didn't wipe them away. Because she wasn't crying yet. She was breaking. Daniel stepped forward, positioning himself between her and Adrian. It's real, he said. Simple. Final. Adrian's jaw tightened. For the first time, he had no control of the room. And he knew it. From the edges of the garden. Movement. Subtle at first. Then unmistakable. Men in suits stepping forward. Fast. Focused. Adrian saw them. And this time, the mask didn't just crack. It shattered. Because he finally understood. This wasn't a mistake. This was a trap. And it had already closed. The shift was immediate. What had been a wedding turned into chaos in seconds. Federal agents. Don't move. The voices cut through the garden like thunder. Sharp. Commanding. Unavoidable. Guests gasped, some standing abruptly, chairs scraping loudly against the ground. Others froze in place, unsure whether to leave or stay. Phones dropped. Glasses shattered. Emily didn't move. She stood exactly where she was. Eyes wide. Breath shallow. Because everything around her had stopped making sense. Two agents reached Adrian first. Fast. Precise. Adrian Cole, one of them said firmly, grabbing his arm. You are under arrest for wire fraud, financial conspiracy, and related federal charges. Adrian reacted instantly, not with panic, but with resistance. This is a mistake, he snapped, pulling slightly. You have no idea what you're doing. But the second agent stepped in, cold, unmoved. Oh, we know exactly what we're doing. Metal clicked. The sound of handcuffs locking into place. Final. A collective gasp swept through the crowd. No, wait. Emily's voice broke through, trembling. Stop, what's happening? She took a step forward, but Daniel moved first. Not forcefully, not aggressively. Just enough to stand between her and the scene unfolding. Dad, what is this? She cried. Daniel didn't answer right away. Because there was nothing simple left to say. Behind him, Adrian's composure was slipping. Not entirely, but enough. You set me up, he said, his voice low, sharp. Daniel met his gaze. Calm. Unshaken. No, Daniel replied quietly. You set yourself up. Adrian let out a short, bitter laugh. You think this ends here? He said. You think you've won? Daniel didn't respond. Because this was never about winning. It was about ending it. Sir, you need to come with us, one agent said, pulling Adrian toward the exit. Adrian resisted again, just slightly. Enough to turn his head. To look at Emily one last time. And for a split second, something changed in his expression. Not regret. Not guilt. Annoyance. Like she had become inconvenient. Emily saw it. And that was the moment everything inside her collapsed. Was any of it real? She whispered. Adrian didn't answer. Because he didn't need to. The silence said enough. They pulled him away. Past the rows of stunned guests. Past the shattered illusion. And just like that, he was gone. But it wasn't over. Because another voice rose from the crowd. Panicked. Shaken. Daniel, what is this? Lucas. He stepped forward, pale, eyes darting wildly between the agents and Daniel. This is insane, he said quickly. You can't. This is a misunderstanding. Lucas Harper. Another agent turned toward him. We need you to come with us. Lucas froze. No, I didn't. Listen, I didn't do anything. But his voice lacked conviction. Because deep down, he knew. Daniel looked at him. Not with anger, not with rage, but with something far heavier. Disappointment. You heard the recording, Daniel said quietly. Lucas shook his head rapidly. That doesn't prove anything. People say things. Plans, Daniel interrupted. A beat. You made plans. Lucas's mouth opened, closed. No words came out. Because there weren't any left. The agent stepped closer. Sir. Lucas looked around, desperate now. At the guests. At the ground. At Daniel. Dad, he started. Daniel didn't move. Didn't step forward. Didn't save him. Because this was the consequence. Lucas's voice cracked. Please, this isn't. The agent took his arm. Firm. Controlled. And just like that, Lucas was pulled away too. 2 men. 2 betrayals. Gone. The garden fell into a strange, broken silence. No music. No laughter. Just whispers. Shock. Confusion. And in the center of it all, Emily. Standing alone. Her dress still perfect. Her world completely destroyed. She looked at the empty space where Adrian had stood. Then slowly turned to Daniel. Tears streamed down her face now. Uncontrolled. You knew, she said. Not a question. A realization. Daniel nodded once. A small movement, but heavy with truth. Emily's voice broke completely. And you let it happen? That one hit harder than anything else. Daniel stepped closer. Slow. Careful. I stopped it, he said quietly. Emily shook her head, stepping back. No, she whispered. You waited. Her voice trembled with pain, with anger, with betrayal. I had to, Daniel said. But even as he said it, he knew. There was no version of this. That didn't hurt her. Emily let out a broken breath. Then turned away. Because she couldn't look at him. Not yet. Around them, the guests began to leave. Slowly. Quietly. A wedding that had promised forever, ending in silence. And Daniel Harper stood there, watching it all fall apart. Knowing one thing for certain. He had saved his daughter's life. But at the cost of breaking her heart. The house was quiet again. Not the peaceful kind of quiet Daniel used to know. This one felt empty. 3 days had passed since the wedding. 3 days since everything collapsed. The flowers were gone. The chairs removed. The garden restored like nothing had ever happened. But inside the house, the silence lingered. Daniel stood in the kitchen, staring at a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. He hadn't touched it, hadn't slept much either. Because every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face. Not the smile from that morning, not the laughter. The moment it broke. You waited. Her words echoed louder than anything else. Daniel exhaled slowly. He had replayed that moment over and over. Not the arrest. Not Adrian. Her. The way she looked at him. Like she didn't recognize him anymore. And maybe she didn't. Footsteps broke the silence. Soft. Hesitant. Daniel turned. Emily stood in the doorway. No dress. No makeup. No illusion. Just her. She looked smaller somehow. Not physically, but emotionally. Like something inside her had been stripped away. Hey, she said quietly. Daniel nodded. Hey. A pause. Long. Uncomfortable. Neither of them moved at first. Then Emily stepped in slowly. I've been going through everything, she said. Her voice steady, but fragile underneath. Daniel didn't interrupt. The accounts, she continued. The documents, emails. She swallowed. You were right. The words landed softly, but they carried weight. Daniel looked down briefly. Not in victory, not in relief. Just acknowledgement. I didn't want to be, he said. Emily let out a small, broken laugh. Yeah, she whispered. Me neither. Silence settled again. But this time, it wasn't as heavy. Emily walked further into the room. Her eyes moved around slowly. Like she was seeing everything differently now. I keep thinking about what he said, she admitted. Daniel's expression tightened slightly. Which part? Emily shook her head. Not the plan, she said. That's obvious now. She looked at him. The part about me. Daniel didn't respond. She'd walk into a fire if I told her it was warm. Her voice cracked. I actually believed him, she whispered. Daniel took a step forward. That's not your fault. Emily shook her head again. No, she said quietly. But it is my responsibility. That caught him. She met his eyes. I ignored things, she continued. Small things. Red flags. Because I wanted it to be real. Daniel didn't argue. Because he knew. That was true. Emily exhaled slowly. I trusted him more than I trusted you. That one. Still hurt. But Daniel didn't react. Because this wasn't about him. I was wrong, she said. Simple. Honest. And harder than anything else she had said. Daniel nodded once. I know. A tear slipped down her cheek. She wiped it quickly this time. I'm sorry, she added. Daniel stepped closer. You don't need to apologize. She looked at him. I do, she said. Because you didn't just lose him. A beat. You lost me too. Daniel's throat tightened slightly. But he didn't look away. Not forever, he said quietly. Emily held his gaze. No, she agreed. Another pause. Then, slowly, she stepped forward. And this time, when she hugged him, it was different. Not the same innocence. Not the same certainty. But real. Honest. Daniel closed his eyes. Just for a second. Because this was what mattered. Not the plan. Not the arrest. This. After a moment, Emily pulled back. What happens now? She asked. Daniel exhaled slowly. Adrian's going to trial, he said. There are more victims coming forward. Emily nodded. And Lucas? Daniel hesitated. He'll face consequences, he said carefully. Emily looked down. He was my brother, she whispered. Daniel didn't correct her. Because once, that had been true. Emily straightened slightly. I want to testify, she said. Daniel looked at her. You don't have to. I know, she replied. A pause. But I want to. There was strength in her voice now. Not the same as before. Different. Harder. Earned. Daniel nodded slowly. Okay. Emily took a breath. Then looked around the house one more time. I think I need to leave for a while, she said. Daniel's chest tightened slightly. Where? Just somewhere quiet, she replied. Figure things out. Daniel nodded. Take your time. She smiled faintly. I will. She started toward the door, then paused. Dad. Daniel looked up. Yeah. Emily hesitated, just for a second, then said, You didn't ruin my wedding. A beat. You saved my life. Daniel didn't respond immediately, because those were the words he had been waiting for. Not for validation, but for understanding. Emily gave him one last look, then walked out. And this time, when the door closed, the silence that followed felt different. Not empty, just quiet. Daniel stood there for a long moment, then finally picked up the cold cup of coffee, took a sip, winced slightly. Still bitter, but real. And for the first time in days, he allowed himself to breathe. Because everything he had built had nearly been destroyed. His family, his trust, his world. But not everything was lost. Some things had survived. And sometimes, that's enough. Because the truth doesn't just destroy illusions. It saves the people still trapped inside them.